Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be talking about Five Nights at Freddy's once again. We will be covering the question of what exactly happened in the ending of Five Nights at Freddy's 4 and who was speaking to Evan when he said that he will put him back together. And I will show you how this connects and builds a bigger story and to ifs and whats and all kinds of things like that. So let me begin. At the end of Five Nights at Freddy's 4, after the bite victim, for convenience sake I will call Evan, is told, quote, "You are broken, I will put you back together," end quote. Now, the text is similar to the text that his Fredbear plushie speaks to him. There are different shades of yellow, but they are still yellow. The ending text is a lighter shade of yellow than the regular yellow shade that the regular Fredbear text is in. So many people are debating on who is speaking to him. Is this William Afton, his father, also known as the man behind the solder, or is it Charlie, the one who possessed the puppet? But if you see my previous theory, then you know that she probably died after this. So, as I was saying now, who? I believe that it is William Afton speaking to him in this text, and the reason why it is a slightly lighter shade of yellow is because how I interpret it is that it's him taking off the mask of Fredbear. He's no longer speaking to him as Fredbear, he's speaking to him as his father, and it's being done in this way to make sure we know that this is the same person, but it's him and his real, who he really is, his father, not a psychic friend plushie, Fredbear. Now, yes, in Midnight Motorist, his William Afton's text, because the yellow man is most definitely William Afton, his text is very clearly yellow. It's much more close to the yellow that Fredbear speaks in the fourth game than the yellow at the very end of the game. But Scott wasn't thinking this big of a scope back then. This is meant to be the final chapter note, and it could also be in this, but also think about it in this context that this is this is Evan in his dying last moments, maybe already dead, if flatlined. In this context, it could be, and since the scope that Scott had, this could be a way of showing that the person saying this is the same person as Fredbear, but not literally Fredbear, but the person who is speaking to him through the plushie, as in Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. In the secret ending, when you end up in the secret room, you can find a Fredbear plush with a walkie-talkie right next to it. It's sitting basically on its lap. So it could easily be interpreted that William Afton was speaking to his son Evan through a walkie-talkie that was embedded in the stuffing of the plushie, and he communicated with him through that. And he did for all that time. But at the very end, he stopped speaking to him through the Fredbear plushie and started speaking to him in person. And he said, "You are broken, I will put you back together." Now, in Five Nights at Freddy's Ultimate Custom Night, one of the death lines that Nightmare Fredbear states is that, quote, "Let me put you back together and take you apart all over again." Now, this would be strange for them to say, end quote. This would be strange to say if you're saying this to a person who didn't say it. You know, if the theory that Charlie said it was true, you know, it wouldn't make sense to say it to William, because he'd be like, "What are you saying?" It wouldn't make sense to him. And another one of his quotes after he kills you is, quote, "We know who our friends are. You're not one of them," end quote. And at the end of the game, Fredbear, still in the Fredbear color text, tells him that him and the plushie, which we know Evan considers his friends, are still his friends, and asks him if he still believes that. As this is happening, as we see the plushies that he considers his friends begin to fade away, leaving only the Fredbear plushie. Again, it wouldn't make any sense if he was saying this to William, and William was the one saying it. It only makes sense in context, given the very similar colors of their shading, and think about the scope and context of his time and scene, that William promised his son he was going to put him back together, but he never did. He never put his son back together. He never did whatever he was trying to do. And this is part of the bigger thing I was talking about, that this started everything. His killings, his murdering. And let me explain. As I stated in my previous theory, Charlie most likely died in the days following the Bite of 83, most likely once Evan died. And since there are 8 nights in the game, 3 after the bite cutscene, it can be assumed that 3 days pass after the bite, which would leave enough time for him to be put in the hospital, most likely then begin to operate on his brain, and probably had to shave his head to do that, which would give greater credence to my theory that possibly the person sitting in the chair was the wife who shaved her, why she's bald is to be in solidarity with her son, who most likely had to have his head shaved. You'd still could operate on his head and try and save him. And most likely shortly after Evan flatlined in some kind of rage, madness, having lost a son, when driving, maybe back from the hospital, or maybe from some other place, and saw Charlie in a fit of rage, killed her because Henry's daughter was still alive, his business partner was alive and well, while his son just died because of the actions of his own older son, and William wasn't able to prevent it, and he couldn't do anything to stop it because he was always consumed by his work. We know William Afton was, for most sure, experimenting with Remnant, trying to figure out the way to immortality, to live forever, as most interpret it as. But think about the "I will put you back together" thing. It would have not have taken long for him to eventually figure out that people can possess these things, these animatronics. It probably took until maybe shortly after the Springlock incident at the sister location mentioned in the Final Fantasy Freddy's free tapes, where I talked about in my last video, or maybe shortly after Charlie died. He noticed that the puppet was being a little strange, and why now this gets me to why he did everything, why he killed the 5 kids in 1985, why he killed the 5 more kids in 1987, and why he opened up Circus Baby's Pizza, and because to experiment with Remnant, and he figured that maybe in some way he could put his son back together if he could really focus it and harness it, and maybe get him to possess something in some way that he could be alive again. That either after the Springlock incident, or Charlie possessing the puppet, he realized, oh wait, they can possess these things, and he saw the ghosts and shadows of Shadow Freddy, Shadow Bonnie, and realized something, and decided to try working with it. And most likely was to push further to continue doing this after the missing children incident. Because he for sure knew that the original animatronics were possessed. These things are haunted. They're moving around, not doing things they should. This would probably have pushed him greater to researching this, trying to figure out everything he can learn about Remnant, and doing whatever he could to learn more about it and try to harness it and focus it. And so most likely sometime shortly after the events of the missing children, he started the whole Circus Baby's Pizza World thing, and he built these machines intentionally to capture children. We see the blueprints in Funtime Freddy. We know what happened to his daughter Elizabeth. She got taken up by Circus Baby, the main animatronic, because the big scooper thing, and you clawed her in. He would intentionally build these things to capture and kill children, either with at least Circus Baby to kill them immediately, or at least with Funtime Freddy to bring him to him so he could experiment, so he could kill them himself or do his fear gas experiments on them. And there's a very high chance that these things themselves are possessed, probably by new victims, because we know after the failure of Circus Baby's Pizza World, they eventually became Circus Baby's Pizza and Rentals, and it became most likely restarted as the Rentals after the events of FNAF 1, as it mentions that after the success and eventual closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, that Circus Baby and Rentals came along, and he most likely continued this for some time. Till an unknown date when he eventually when the place shut down, probably because all the animatronics were gone, and he got spring locked himself. What I'm trying to say is the MCI, the DCI, and him opening up circus babies, building these animatronics these ways so you could capture them, was probably all an attempt to try and find out how to put his own son back together. And once he figured out that a remnant was a thing that these could be possessed, he was trying to do that to bring his son back. But in the end, he ended up killing his own daughter accidentally, Elizabeth, and of course murdered many children. Not counting Charlie because she wasn't intentionally part of it. He killed probably around, I would say, 13 children. And not because Funtime Freddy, Foxy, and 12. Funtime Freddy, Foxy were most definitely haunted and possessed. 13, yeah, because of Elizabeth, ended up killing 13 children. I'm not so sure about Laura. I don't know what's up with her. I don't think she's possessed by like a child like the rest of them are. Because the rules for I personally would dare definitely possessed. It's because it just makes sense, But all of this was driven by a man who had lost his son, promised to put him back together. All these people died, even more of his family died in this process. And they tried, but couldn't get it done, and ended up dead himself, possessing his own body basically. But it was all rotten and stuff. Burning. Along with his other still alive son, who kind of kicked it all off himself because he killed his own brother, Cain and Abel style. And he goes to heck where he's tormented. And of course, there's the possibility that Cassidy, the one who probably did all this, is holding the other spirits hostage to kind of force them to stay back here so they can torture William for all of eternity. And now if she's doing this all alone, I don't know how she would notice. So the others are probably there with her, maybe, For the way the puppet speaks in Ultimate Custom Night, it speaks like someone who really did know him, not just a version of it created by one person. So Cassie's most likely keeping all the spirits hostage there, sort of getting forcing to torture William over and over to the end of time. And they take on the forms of the seriously possessed. And the closest thing to that for Evan would be Nightmare Fredbear. Right? And so when he kills his father, one of the many times, he says that, let me put you back together, to take you apart all over again, because his father failed to put him back together when he promised to. And that's why the puppet speaks the way she is, because Charlie is being held by Cassidy, the vengeful spirit, or the one he should not have killed, and has been the first one dead, been dead for so long, and you probably become the most aware that she's not even afraid of him anymore, especially because he's trapped, he's stuck, he's probably just stuck in that seat, probably can't even leave it, for you forever and ever. And basically that's the theory, really. I hope you all enjoyed the video, ladies and gentlemen. If you all had a nice time, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Bye, have a nice time.